Spent the night with a friend at a country house. Someone tried to break in. Police didn't want to help. I'm a woman, and this happened when I was 20. It was the early 2000s, and pretty much everyone still used landlines. Cell phones weren't that common yet. This took place in a small town about an hour outside of Sacramento. My friend was house sitting for a family they knew through church. The house was out in the countryside rural area. The family had animals, cats, rabbits, a donkey, and a horse. They also had dogs, but the owners took them when they left. My friend's job was to feed the animals and watch over the house. She didn't need to pick up the mail. It was delivered to a locked box at the end of a long driveway. There were no neighbors nearby, just alfalfa fields, cows, and corn. So my friend asked if I wanted to stay over with her to keep her company. I thought it would be fun. I just moved from my aunt and uncle's place into my own apartment and told her I'd swing by after work. We got there around 9:30 p.m. and grabbed some dinner on the way. First, we went to the barn to feed the animals. They were hungry and making lots of noise. After watering and feeding them, we headed inside. The house was a single-story ranch style. The front door opened to the living room. To the right, there was a long hallway with bedrooms and a bathroom. Straight ahead was the dining room, with the kitchen and a sliding door to the patio on the left. The kitchen also had a hallway with a few doors leading to what my friend told me were playrooms for the kids. The homeowner ran a daycare. We didn't go into those rooms. We hung out, watched TV, finished dinner, and talked about mutual friends. When it got late, my friend turned on the security system and told me she didn't like sleeping in other people's beds. She usually crashed on the couch. She offered me the couch, but I chose one of the big recliners that leaned almost flat. Super comfy. I curled up in a blanket in the recliner. She got into the other chair, and we left the TV on, chatting a bit in the dark. Then the motion sensor lights outside came on, lighting up the room. To this day, I don't get why people in the country don't use blinds or curtains. It's crazy to me. We both fell silent. My friend said, "Maybe it's just a cat?" Then we heard footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. My recliner was closer to the window, so I slid onto the floor, clutching my blanket. The outside lights turned off, and my friend slid to the floor too. We were lying there, stomachs down, frozen. Suddenly, BAM! Something hit the house hard. The alarm started blaring, and the lights switched on again. It was so loud we covered our ears. I started panicking. I swear, I've never been so close to wetting myself from fear. I crawled to the alarm panel. I'd seen those ads where you push a button, and someone responds or calls the police. The display read, "Patio door 1 of 2 open." My friend started crying and hit the call for help button. Nothing happened. No response. I asked, "Where's the phone?" She said one was in the kitchen and the other in the master bedroom. So we had 2 choices, go past the patio door to the kitchen or go through the house to the master bedroom. I asked her where the other patio door was. She said in the daycare side of the house. That made the choice obvious. We headed to the master bedroom. It was pitch dark. I asked, "Where's the phone?" She said, "We need to turn on the light." I didn't want to, but we didn't have a flashlight, and I'd left my phone at home. My friend didn't have one at the time. She got one after this. She turned on the light, and we looked around. No curtains. No doors. Near the bed was a golf club, I guess instead of a baseball bat. We grabbed it just in case, figured it would leave a mark if we had to hit someone. We found the cordless phone base, but the phone itself was missing. The alarm was still screaming. The lights were on. Anyone outside would definitely see us. My friend asked, "Should I hit the find handset button?" I looked at her and said, "Only if you want some creep to walk in and say, 'Looking for this?'" I was terrified and mad that I'd ended up in this situation. We realized we had to go to the kitchen. Then the alarm stopped. Instant silence. If you've ever lived in the country, you know how creepy that silence is. I told my friend to go first, turning on every light as we went. We closed every door along the way. The panel still read, "Patio door open." We tried the call for help button again, still nothing. We checked that the front door was locked and headed to the kitchen. I grabbed the biggest knife I could find, though it was dull. We checked the kitchen patio door, locked. We turned on all the lights and called 911. The phone was an old-school wall phone with a cord. While my friend was on the phone, I heard a whistle outside the kitchen window. When you've got the lights on inside, all anyone outside can see is your reflection. But you can't see them unless they press their face to the glass. The whistle happened again. I wasn't about to press my face to the glass to see who was out there. My friend was crying and trying to explain to the dispatcher where we were, but she didn't know the exact address. She handed me the phone. The dispatcher, sounding annoyed, said she needed the address to send police. I said, "Can't you trace the call?" She said something like, "You're house sitting and don't know where you are?" I was terrified, furious, and told my friend to keep looking for anything with an address on it. I was searching drawers, counters, the fridge, all while glancing toward the daycare hallway. because that's where the open patio door was. My friend told the dispatcher the mail was locked up at the end of the driveway. Then my friend pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at me. I asked, "Are they tracing it?" She whispered, she said, "Hope the cops find you in time," and hung up. We were frozen. We knew someone was out there. We knew the daycare patio door was open. We had no idea what to do. Finally, I grabbed the phone and called 411 information. They connected us to the local police department. I calmly explained everything, told them about the unhelpful 911 dispatcher, and said we needed help urgently. Then we heard a loud metallic noise outside the kitchen patio door, like someone had dropped something heavy in metal. My friend broke down sobbing, and I started crying too. I was convinced they were about to break in. The 411 operator stayed on the line and patched us through to the local police. As we were talking, we heard the whistle again, then the motion lights came back on. The officer said they were sending several units, but that it would take time since we were so far out of town. Knowing help was on the way calmed us a little, but we were still terrified. Finally, the officer said they'd arrived and were coming up the driveway. He told us to hang up and open the door. I peeked out and saw a police truck with spotlights scanning the fields. 2 officers were walking slowly up the long driveway with shotguns. 4 officers reached the house. They asked our names, called dispatch to confirm they were on scene, and started searching the property. 1 officer came back through the kitchen patio door and said the barn animals looked spooked. They found the daycare patio door unlatched. The handle had been jammed with a mop stick to prevent it from opening too wide, but it had been forced. I looked through the door where the officer came in, no one there now, but the fear was overwhelming. The cops scolded my friend for not knowing the house address and for a few other things I can't remember now. They told us we could stay while they searched more, or leave with them. We got the hell out of there. We drove straight to my friend's mom's place and crashed. The next morning, I went to work. Later that day, my friend called me at work. She was freaking out. She said when they went back to feed the animals, they found boot prints in the mud inside the house. I told her maybe it was a cop who'd gone into the barn. She said maybe. But then she told me they found the rabbits, all 10 of them, tied up. Next to them was a note scribbled on a pizza coupon that said, "Lucky ones." She thought the coupon had been taken from their fridge. One was missing. They untied the rabbits and called the police again, but no one was ever caught. My friend refused to go back after that. Story 2. I got left alone in an abandoned house in the Mojave Desert, and someone else was there. Back around 1992, I was in high school. Unlike most of my classmates who worked at McDonald's or in the mall, I worked with my hands. I did small jobs in flooring and auto repair, all under the table. I'd been working this way since I was 14, good for me and good for the guys hiring me. They'd call me when they needed an extra pair of hands, and I only worked evenings and weekends so it didn't interfere with school. One of the contractors I worked with handled commercial remodels, restaurants, bars, shops. You could only work on these places after they closed, so I got used to working weird hours. He trusted me. I earned his respect early by doing solid work without complaining, even though I was just a kid. They paid me well. I could make more in one night than my friends did working a full week at McDonald's. One day he called and said he had a Saturday job for me. I said sure. He told me to pack food and water, lots of water, because this place was way out there. I filled my little cooler with soda, chips, and sandwiches. I could eat an entire pizza back then and still burn it off. Saturday morning, he picked me up. I didn't have a car or license yet. Here's my first mistake. I wasn't paying attention to where we were driving. We were talking about cars. My dream was to save up for an old muscle car and rebuild it. We drove way out. And when I say way out, I mean deep into the Mojave Desert. It might sound crazy, but in the early 90s there were huge patches of desert in California where you'd find random houses sitting miles apart. We turned off the highway onto a series of 2-lane roads, then dirt roads. He asked if I'd brought water, then handed me a giant jug from his truck. The jug looked old and gross, but he told me to take it just in case. This house didn't have running water. When we pulled up, he was in a hurry. We unloaded tools fast: crowbars, shovels, sledgehammer, broom, trash bins, tool bag. He said he'd be back around 5 or 6 p.m. There was no power at the house, so I had to finish before dark. That was his way of saying, "I'm only paying you for this much time, so get it done." It was fine. He and I had a good understanding. His expectations were always fair. Then he drove off, and I was completely alone. I went inside. The house was almost empty. My job was to clear out the remaining furniture, tear out all the flooring, gut the kitchen and bathrooms, and strip the wood paneling. It was a flip job. They'd bought a rundown house and were planning to fix it up and resell it. But the place felt off immediately. I wasn't new to being alone on job sites. I'd worked entire nights alone before. But this felt wrong. It was an old, dark, musty house. Cold inside, even though it was the desert. Gave me goosebumps. Picture a ranch house straight out of the 60s or earlier, dark green carpet, wood paneling, avocado-colored appliances. No one had touched the decor in 30 years. There were old stuffed animals in a cabinet that looked ancient. Luckily, I had a little battery-powered radio, only got a couple stations, but the noise helped. I started working. Hauled out the junk. Tore up the floors, that part went fast. Took a big demo hammer and smashed up the kitchen. I was drinking water steadily. In the desert, it sucks the moisture right out of you. By late afternoon, I was running out of drinks and had eaten all my food. No big deal, I figured they'd be back soon. I finished everything early. Cleaned the place spotless. Then the sun started going down. And it got cold fast. I only had a flannel shirt. And no power, no phone, no water except for that nasty jug. That's when it hit me, no one else knew where I was. Not my parents, I hadn't told them. They didn't keep tabs on me on weekends. The contractor might have mentioned it to his crew or not. I was alone. And it was getting dark. I climbed onto the roof to look around. I could see the dirt road that led to a few scattered houses, but they were all dark. Looked abandoned. In the early 90s, there was a big recession, tons of foreclosed houses. I'd worked in plenty of them. So now I had a choice. Stay in the creepy house till morning. Walk miles through the dark desert hoping to find someone. Wait till dawn and then walk out. I decided to wait. But now the house felt worse. I thought it was creepy during the day. At night, it was downright terrifying. No flashlight. No firewood. My radio's batteries were dying. I sat in an old wooden chair in the living room, staring at the front door. The wind picked up. I heard things moving outside, maybe animals. Maybe not. I tried to light a fire in the fireplace with some old scrap wood, no luck. I kept hearing things. I told myself it was rats. Or the wind. Then, footsteps. Inside the house. I jumped up, yelled hey. A crash came from the other end of the house. I bolted outside. The moon was bright, so I could see pretty well. I grabbed a big crowbar and kept moving. I was freezing and terrified. I climbed up on a fence and scanned the area. No lights. No cars. Nothing. Now my mind started going wild. Stories about satanic cults in the Mojave, mob dumps, people disappearing out here. Every sound made my heart pound harder. I knew no one was supposed to be inside, but I kept hearing noises. I huddled on the porch, eyes glued to the living room window, ready to run if I saw anything. Around midnight, I turned around and I saw it. A figure moving from the kitchen into the hallway. A person. Not an animal. Not my imagination. A person. I scrambled back, tripped over the debris pile, hit the ground. As I was trying to get up, a bright light hit me. It was my contractor's truck. He jumped out and looked at me like, what the hell? I was shaking and told him what had happened. Turns out, it was a mix-up. The crew thought he was coming for me. He thought they were. No one came. He felt terrible and promised to pay me for the whole time. Handed me a Coke. I chugged it instantly. On the way back to town, we hit a drive-thru and I ate like I hadn't eaten in days. I asked him if he knew anything about that house. He said no, just that it was a cheap flip. After that, I always carried spare batteries, a flashlight, and double the water. And I never let anyone drop me off in the middle of nowhere again. Story 3, I still get chills when I think about it. A couple of years ago, either in late fall or early winter of 2019, we were temporarily living at my father-in-law's house. A few months later, we rented a home and moved out, but at this point, we'd only been staying there for about a week. I was sleeping on an air mattress in the living room with our 3 kids, aged 10, 5, and 1 at the time. The kitchen, dining room, and living room were all one big open space. There was a wide counter with a sink that separated the kitchen from the living room. On the living room side, it was like a bar, but there were never any bar stools there. My father-in-law always placed the couch up against that counter. On the kitchen side of it, there were cabinets and storage underneath. On the wall opposite the front door were 3 doors. From left to right, my father-in-law's bedroom, the bathroom, and the guest bedroom. My husband was sleeping on a small bed in the guest room. His dad always kept his bedroom door shut and usually had the TV on, plus either a heater, a window AC unit, or at least a fan running depending on the weather. I can't remember now if the guest room door was open or closed that night. Aside from that wall with the doors, the rest of the house had windows running along every side. Huge floor-to-ceiling windows in the front, and long sliding windows down each side wall. The house was originally built as a cabin or hunting lodge, so I guess the idea was to have a great view of the outdoors. My father-in-law hated that though. He had started building a porch and putting up walls to cover parts of the windows. But at that point, the porch wasn't finished and none of the windows had been removed or replaced yet. That night, I was holding the baby, 18 months old at the time, in my arms, and my other 2 kids were laying beside me on the air mattress. We had all been asleep for a while when I suddenly woke up. I don't know what time it was, but the house was completely silent. Everyone was still sleeping. I laid there for a bit, not moving, wondering why I'd woken up so wide awake. I figured maybe it was just one of those weird sleep things. I was about to fall back asleep when I heard someone knock on the door. Not loud or frantic, but definitely a knock. The air mattress was in the middle of the living room, and the front door was on the kitchen side, behind the counter. I didn't want to open it for a lot of reasons. First, I was lying there with 3 sleeping kids. Second, it was late, cold, and we were all warm and snuggled together. Third, it wasn't my house, and it wasn't my guest to deal with. And nobody else in the house seemed to have noticed the knocking. The knock kept going. Longer than I'd ever knock on a stranger's door in the middle of the night. It got more persistent but never turned into banging. Nobody called out. No phone rang. Then I heard footsteps on the unfinished porch. There were boards, tools, and other construction materials piled up out there. I didn't hear any big crashes, but I could tell someone was moving around, stepping over things. And then there was a very clear, deliberate tapping on the window right where we were lying with the kids. There was a little old TV and a stereo on small stands next to the window. I was lying with my back to it, but the tapping was right above our heads. The entire wall was window from floor to ceiling, but the tapping was only in one spot, the part that would have been right in my line of sight if I'd been facing the window. I think I held my breath the entire time until the tapping stopped and I heard footsteps moving away onto what sounded like metal sheets near the driveway. Now here's the part that really messed me up later. The next morning, I realized that the only sheets of metal out there were already installed on the roof above the porch. There weren't any metal sheets lying around at ground level under the windows or near the porch. The only way someone could have walked on metal sheets after tapping the window was if they had climbed up onto the porch roof and then jumped down off the other side. That thought still scares me more than anything. Whoever it was didn't just walk up and knock. They circled the house, walked across tools and boards, tapped the window right where we were, and then climbed up and over the roof to leave. It still gives me chills every time I remember it.